Good afternoon and welcome to Biztech Asian Midday Marketwatch. Our guest today is Vishnu Varathan, Head of Economics and Strategy at Mizuho Bank in Singapore. Now, Vishnu, as always, great to have you on the show.
Always a pleasure to be here, Brian. Thanks for having me.
Now, Vishnu, before we get your insights, we'll take a look at how markets across the region are performing, including crypto markets. Markets in China are closed for most of the week for holidays. They are set to reopen on Friday. South Korean markets are also closed today for a holiday. Now, we start by taking a look at the crypto markets, and we've got Bitcoin at 47,800. It's down 0.2%. Ethereum is at 3,359.7. It is down 1.14%. Now, looking across markets across Asia, the Nikkei is at 28,414.76. It's down 1.25%. The Hang Seng is down 2.25% at 24,022.64. The ASX 200 is up 1.16% at 7,269.1. Closer to home, we've got Bursa Malaysia's FBM KLCI, which is at 1,523.66. It's down 0.05%. And rounding up the numbers, we've got the SGX, which is at 3,095. It's up 1.46%. So Vishnu, what's your view on how markets have performed this morning?
Well, I think markets are still in a bit of a mixed mode. There's certainly some cheer that's been borrowed from the US market, not the least because of Merck's COVID pill that's leading to some kind of optimism about reopening sooner and more comprehensively across the world. I mean, that's certainly one hope to hang some cheer on. But equally, I don't think all of the risk factors have just faded away magically either. For one, we are still assessing and dealing with the power crunch that's not just occurring in China, but in Europe as well. This almost certainly will translate into higher costs in the region at a time when the recovery is still fragile. So I think those are giving rise to some considerations, and of course, a restacking and reordering of how different economies will do given the different dependence on China's supply chains, and perhaps more directly on the reliance on imported energy prices, which are on quite a sharp ascendancy.
And Vishnu, I've got to zoom back on regional economies and COVID risk, because it's a really mixed bag, isn't it? Because you've got countries like Malaysia, for example, who are in critical areas already passing the 80% vaccination mark. But then you have laggards in some of the other ASEAN markets, and all of this is going to impact growth tremendously because countries like Malaysia have opened up the economy, started to open up, rightly so, because the economy has been damaged severely. But that's the level of vaccination is going to have a huge impact on how regional economies are impacted.
I mean, definitely, and in fact, we can use vaccination rates as a sort of proxy of the confidence in the economy and the confidence to open up. And this continues to be, I think, a bit of a challenge for the region for two reasons. Like you rightly pointed out, one is we've got very uneven vaccination rates, and perhaps vaccination rates that lag the rest of the world, except for just a few outliers such as Malaysia, Singapore, where vaccination rates are higher. So the catch-up means that it might take a bit longer before unfettered opening up can become a reality for this region. The other, of course, is also watching that or seeing as that China has got a huge impact on the region, and if China starts to stutter, we have got not one problem but two problems, and I think maybe that compounds the challenges that the region faces. I think that the main takeaway for us is the unchanged view that second half is going to be one of headwinds, and a more complete recovery at best is going to come through in 2022, and perhaps the later part of that, if anything.
But one of the key things that's a worry, particularly this morning, is the escalating Evergrande related risk to the Chinese economy, because trading in Hong Kong listed shares of Evergrande was halted today. there's also other property developer which has halted trading. Is that risk of contagion part of the broader risk associated with China right now, besides all the other underlying risk of the the clampdown on the tech sector, now the property sector, and so forth?
I mean, for me, the biggest risk for China is what you just mentioned. And we can actually very broadly classify it under regulatory risks and the state trying to control some of the bubbles and the over leveraging in the property sector, as well as trying to regain some control over the kind of data and the kind of influence that the tech sector may assert. So the power crunch is less of an issue because it's going to be something that can be resolved, even though the pain may be felt for 1 to 2 quarters. Whereas what you just mentioned continues to be a big issue because no easy resolutions are around unless you get a big step in by the state. And for now, the state seems unwilling to do so. And the best case outcome for now is just a rolling series of measures to just about deal with liquidity as it comes due, but not a resounding resolution. And I think this will be at the very least, a major holdback in the recovery rates around the region. In the worst case, you are absolutely right. The contagion risks have not faded. They remain on the table, even if the focus is now not quite there. And I think that will continue to paint the risk picture for Asia.
So the risk picture also, as you correctly pointed out just earlier in this conversation, the risk of imported inflation in the region is also huge with the spike in energy prices. And we also see that although Governor Powell has stuck to his script that inflation will be transitory, he's also seen recently to sort of hedge his comments as well. What's your view on that?
I think we are all discovering and making this up along as we go. Incoming
Yeah.
evidence has been quite varied. I think the confidence around transitory inflation that we saw earlier was not unjustified because a lot of the cost would be fleeting. For example, the jump in travel costs, jump in hotel room rates, the squeeze for service sector labor in a very short period of time. But equally, I think what there are worries that are mounting is that the capacity constraints could linger for far longer. And I think energy is a bit of a bogeyman when it comes to very sharp increases because a lot of our previous experiences with prolonged inflation or stagflationary scenarios have been due to energy. And I think this crunch in China has been quite jarring for that reason. So the big takeaway here is we are probably going to end up somewhere in a very mild stagflationary phase where growth starts to falter because of all the headwinds that we spoke about. But at the same time, cost push could persist for far longer. But I think the point that Powell is trying to make very delicately is that risk does not overtake the need to keep economic recovery on track. He just wants to say this in a way where he's not brushing off inflation completely either, because central banks at the end of the day, their bread and butter is to be able to maintain price stability.
Now, Vishnu, what are some of the key data points and market events that are taking place this week that will move markets?
Well, the first one is the absence of something. So China away on holiday means that markets are very closely watching liquidity in that place. So that tells you how important you are. The fact that you're not around makes people more cautious, suggests something. So that's one thing that they're watching, the absence of China in the market. The other thing we're of course watching is the evolving situation with energy prices, commodity prices. So a lot of it is going to be market reaction, but it's also going to be some comments from the supply side, whether Russia can meet demand in Europe, whether OPEC Plus is edging towards upping supply, things like that coming in. In the region, we are watching the RBA. So what Australia says in terms of its policy and how that could evolve. Equally, the RBI is also in the hot seat. And I think this is where the rubber meets the road on high oil prices and what it means for central banks.
Now, Vishnu, as always, thank you very much for coming on the show.
My pleasure. Thank you, Brian.
Now, we've been speaking to Vishnu Varathan, Head of Economics and Strategy at Mizuho Bank on Biztech's Asian Midday Market Watch. I'm Brian Fernandez. Please check out our various platforms as well as our website, www.biztech.asia. Please subscribe and like our various platforms. Thanks again for tuning in.